The air in the countryside felt crisp and strangely still when Emma's car pulled up to her grandmother's old house. The home stood just as it always had, slightly tilted porch, windows that reflected more shadows than light, and a wooden wind chime that produced a hollow clatter in the breeze. The family hadn't gathered here in almost 5 years, not since her grandmother's health had begun to waver. Tonight was meant to be special, a reunion dinner, a reminder that despite time, distance, and quiet grudges, they were still a family. But the moment Emma stepped out of the car, something inside her tightened. She moved stiffly, clutching her coat as if the October chill could slip through her bones. In reality, she wasn't cold. She was uneasy. It was a feeling she couldn't name, something about the house, or maybe the woods behind it, or maybe something within herself she didn't want to confront. She saw silhouettes moving behind the windows, her brother, her sister, her grandmother leaning heavily on her cane. She forced a smile and walked toward the door. Inside, everything felt too warm, too bright, too cheerful. The aroma of roasted chicken and herbs filled the air, the kind of comforting scent that should have put her at ease. But Emma's shoulders remained tense. Her sister Sarah hugged her tightly, commenting on how pale she looked. Emma brushed it off with an excuse about work. Her brother made a sarcastic remark about city stress. Everyone laughed, everyone except Emma. She removed her coat only halfway before deciding to keep it draped around her shoulders, pretending she was cold. She kept brushing her hands against the pockets, as though checking something, her phone, her keys, her composure. Her grandmother watched her more closely than the others, eyes narrowing, but said nothing. They all moved toward the dining table, an old wooden piece worn soft by decades of elbows, plates, and family arguments. Emma sat at the far end, further from the kitchen doorway, closer to the long tablecloth that draped to the floor like a curtain hiding a stage. She slipped her foot under the table, tapping anxiously against the leg. The conversation flowed easily around her, work updates, vacation plans, gossip about distant relatives, but Emma felt disconnected, as though she was underwater listening to voices from above. Her heart rate hadn't slowed since she arrived. She kept adjusting her posture, glancing around without knowing what she was hoping to see. Then, as everyone finally settled with steaming plates before them, something brushed lightly against her shoe. She froze. Her breath hitched, not loud enough for anyone to notice, but sharp enough to make her spine straighten. The sensation returned, this time more deliberate, like fingers sliding along the side of her foot. She pulled her leg back instinctively, knocking her knee against the underside of the table. Silverware clinked. Her sister shot her a confused look. Emma forced a quick smile, but inside she was unraveling. Something was under the table, and whatever it wasn't an accident. Emma tried to steady her breathing, but her chest felt tight, as if her ribs were slowly closing in around her lungs. The sound of her family chatting and clinking silverware suddenly felt distant, muted by the rush of blood pounding in her ears. She sat rigidly, her eyes fixed on her plate while her mind raced. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe she imagined it. A stray draft, a twitch of her foot. But the cold, deliberate sensation she'd felt was far too real to dismiss. Her toes curled inside her shoe. A bead of sweat formed at her hairline despite the warm glow of the dining room lights. She dared to inch her foot forward, testing the air beneath the table. For a moment, there was nothing, and relief washed over her, until something moved again. This time it pressed more firmly, as if a small hand, or something shaped like one, was gripping her ankle. Emma's entire body tensed. She fought the instinct to yank her leg away or shove back her chair. Any sudden movement would draw attention, and the last thing she wanted was to look hysterical. Her family already treated her like the sensitive one. If she overreacted now, they would never let her forget it. She swallowed hard and lifted her eyes to her sister, Sarah, hoping to communicate her fear without words. Sarah misinterpreted the tight expression entirely. She rolled her eyes and whispered, "Seriously, don't start tonight." Then she went back to laughing at their brother's story. Emma's stomach twisted. She was alone in this. The mysterious presence shifted again, slowly like something crawling, not sliding toward her calf. The coldness wasn't like an animal's touch, it felt unnervingly human. Small fingers, ice? The unknown pressed upward, gripping harder. Her fork trembled slightly in her hand. The family kept talking over one another, her brother bragging about his promotion, her grandmother chiming in with questions, Sarah complaining about the drive. No one noticed Emma's pale knuckles or her trembling breath. She leaned slightly toward her brother, speaking out of the corner of her mouth. "Jacob, something is under the table." He didn't even look up. "Probably the cat," he whispered back. "We don't have a cat," she hissed softly. Jacob snorted as if she were being dramatic. Then it's your imagination, just relax. Relax, if only she could. The grip tightened around her leg. She nearly gasped but bit it back at the last second. Sweat prickled at the back of her neck. Every nerve in her body screamed at her to run, to throw the table aside, to expose whatever was beneath it. But fear froze her to the chair. She shifted her leg back again, trying to escape the unseen touch. Instead, it moved with her, following, clinging, climbing. Her breath caught. A tremor rolled through her body. No one at the table noticed. And still, beneath the heavy white tablecloth, something continued to rise, slowly, deliberately. As if announcing that Emma was not imagining anything at all, Emma felt as though the world had shrunk to the small, terrifying space beneath the tablecloth. Every sound in the dining room, every clink of silverware, every burst of laughter, felt warped and distant, as if she were hearing them through glass. All her attention was consumed by the thing curled around her leg. Her knee vibrated involuntarily. She tried to pull her foot away again, testing whether the mysterious grip would loosen. Instead, it tightened almost insistently, like a child refusing to let go of a parent's hand. The sensation sent a sharp chill racing up her spine. She swallowed hard, trying not to choke on her own panic. Again, she nudged her brother. "Jacob," she whispered through clenched teeth, "I'm serious. Something is down there." This time he looked at her, but only to shoot her a tired, irritated expression. Stop it, you're freaking yourself out." "I'm not," she whispered harshly. But he dismissed her with a shrug and returned to eating, mumbling something about her overreacting, as usual. Her grandmother was speaking about a memory from the 1980s, one Emma normally would have listened to with a soft smile. But now her heart was hammering too loudly for her to hear the details. The lights flickered overhead, dimming for 2 seconds before buzzing back to life. Everyone groaned, blaming the old wiring in the house. Emma, however, saw the flicker as an opportunity. She used the brief darkness to shift her chair back, hoping to create some space between her and whatever was below. But the tablecloth moved with her, and the unseen intruder kept hold. Her breath stuttered. She felt her hands trembling in her lap. The conversation resumed, but the room's mood subtly changed. Maybe it was the storm building outside, or maybe it was Emma's growing dread contaminating the air. She felt her throat tighten as she imagined all possibilities, an animal, a person, some unknown thing hiding in the shadows, but the touch was too precise, too intentional. A fork slipped out of her hand and clattered loudly against her plate. The sound snapped her sister's attention straight toward her. "What is wrong with you?" Sarah whispered harshly. "You're acting weird." Emma didn't answer. Instead, her eyes darted downward toward the tablecloth, then back to Sarah. She hoped her expression would convey everything. It didn't. Sarah sighed dramatically, assuming Emma was stressed or tired or simply being overly emotional again, a label she'd given her since childhood. Meanwhile, the intruder under the table began moving upward. Emma felt the soft but unmistakably human-like pressure glide from her calf to her knee. Her skin crawled. She pressed her thighs together instinctively, her entire body tensing like a bent wire ready to snap. Her breathing grew rapid and shallow. The edges of her vision pulsed. Whatever was down there was not an object, not a trick of her imagination, not a stray animal. It was something alive, and now it was climbing. She wanted to scream, to draw the family's attention, to rip off the tablecloth, to bolt out of the room, but fear anchored her to her seat. She felt pinned between the cozy, deceptive warmth of the family dinner and the cold, creeping horror slithering up her leg. Silently under the table, something was making its presence known. And Emma was the only one who felt it. The dining room felt unbearably warm now, yet Emma shivered as though someone had opened a door to winter beneath her chair. Her family continued talking, oblivious, their voices colliding in a muddled blend of conversation that she couldn't follow. She was too focused on the creeping presence inching slowly up her leg, its touch chilling and unmistakably alive. Her breath came in shallow bursts. She could feel her pulse throbbing wildly in her throat. She knew she couldn't sit there any longer. Whatever was touching her was no longer just clinging, it was climbing. Her fear teetered between paralysis and a frantic urge to leap up and overturn the entire table. Then the lights flickered again. This time the dimming lasted longer, 3 seconds, maybe 4, and in that moment of half-darkness, tension crackled through Emma like static. The room seemed to hold its breath. When the lights flickered back, her grandmother commented about the wiring, her brother joked about the house being haunted, and everyone laughed lightly. Everyone except Emma. She seized the moment of distraction. With trembling fingers, she reached toward the edge of the tablecloth. Her hand hesitated midair, shaking. She didn't know what she expected to find. a raccoon, a stray dog, some neighbor's child playing a prank. But something inside her whispered that whatever was hiding wouldn't be so simple, so harmless. Her fingers brushed the fabric. She swallowed, gathering what little courage remained, and lifted the cloth just an inch. Darkness met her eyes, thick, unlit, too deep for the distance. She lifted it a little higher, her heart slamming against her ribs, and then she saw it. A face, small, pale, too close. A pair of enormous eyes stared directly into hers, eyes filled with fear, confusion, and a silent plea she felt in her bones. The child's face was streaked with dirt, their hair tangled and matted as if they had crawled through the woods. Shadows clung to their cheeks like bruises, and their lips trembled with desperation. Emma's breath caught in her throat. A scream rose inside her but lodged halfway, unable to escape. Her hands flew to her mouth, smothering the sound she couldn't let out. The child leaned closer, so close that Emma could feel their shaky breath against her skin. Then, with a small, trembling hand, the child lifted one finger and pressed it gently to their own lips, a gesture begging for silence. Emma's heart stuttered painfully. She didn't know whether to pull away or reach out to the child. Their eyes, wide, dark, pleading, held hers with an intensity that made it impossible to move. The child wasn't threatening her. They were terrified. But of what? Emma opened her mouth to whisper something, anything. Who are you? Or are you hurt? But the child shook their head frantically, trembling harder. Something else was wrong, something bigger than a frightened child hiding under a table. Emma lowered the cloth slowly, her hands shaking violently, and sat frozen in her chair. Her family was still chatting as though nothing had changed. But everything had. Emma now knew there was someone under the table. And that someone needed her silence just as desperately as they needed help. Emma's chair scraped loudly against the wooden floor as she stood up, propelled more by instinct than intention. The sudden movement startled everyone. Forks paused midair, conversations halted, all eyes fixed on her. "Emma," her grandmother asked, "are you all right?" Emma's throat was dry, her voice barely forming. There's someone under the table." A ripple of bewildered silence washed across the room. Sarah frowned like Emma had ruined her perfectly curated evening. Jacob blinked in disbelief, half expecting her to laugh and reveal it was a joke. But Emma didn't laugh. Her pale, trembling face told the truth. She was terrified. Her brother finally leaned down and lifted the tablecloth, expecting to find nothing. Expecting to prove Emma wrong. Expecting to roll his eyes and sit back up, smug. Instead, he froze, because the child was still there. Huddled in the shadows, knees drawn to their chest, eyes wide and frightened. Jacob's expression collapsed from confusion to shock the moment those eyes met his. He dropped the cloth, stumbling to his feet. There's a kid under there," he whispered, voice cracking. Chaos erupted. Sarah gasped and stepped back so quickly her chair tipped over. Their grandmother's hand flew to her chest. Everyone began speaking at once, questions overlapping, fear rising, confusion tightening the room like a noose. Emma crouched down, lifting the tablecloth again slowly, gently making sure the child didn't feel threatened. The child flinched but didn't run. Their lips trembled and tears streaked lines through the dirt on their face. "It's okay," Emma whispered softly. "You're safe." But the child shook their head violently, signaling no, 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 eyes darting around the room as if expecting someone else to appear. Sarah clutched her arms. Where did they come from? How did they get in the house? The doors were locked. Jacob scanned the windows. Did someone break in? Are we being robbed? The child looked even more panicked at the word robbed, shrinking away. Then their grandmother exhaled a long, trembling breath, a sound filled with dread. Her hands shook as she reached for her cane and pushed herself to her feet. I know that child," she whispered. All eyes snapped to her. No one spoke. She lowered herself slowly into a chair, eyes misting with something deeper than fear, regret. "Years ago," she said, voice cracking like old wood, "a young woman came to me desperate. She was running from someone dangerous." Emma's pulse quickened. "She begged me to hide her," the grandmother continued. "She was carrying a baby just a few months old." Her voice wavered. "I let them stay in the old cabin behind the property." Emma's heart dropped. The abandoned cabin, the one they all avoided, the one none of them had entered in years. "What happened to her?" Emma whispered. The grandmother's eyes filled with guilt. "One day, she disappeared. No goodbye, no trace. Only the child remained." Her voice broke. "I searched for weeks, but then I convinced myself they had left. That someone must have taken the child. I never told anyone. I thought—" She covered her face with shaking hands. "I thought the past had taken care of itself." Emma looked at the child, alone, terrified, hungry. "But they didn't leave," Emma said softly. "They stayed. They've been waiting." And in that moment, the truth became undeniable. The child wasn't an intruder. They were a survivor. The storm outside intensified, rattling the window panes and casting restless shadows across the dining room walls. Rain hammered the roof with growing violence, as if the night itself was urging the family to face the truth they had long avoided. Emma could feel the tension in the room shifting, fear colliding with guilt, confusion twisting into responsibility. The child had crawled out from under the table, trembling, clinging to Emma's arm like a lifeline. She wrapped one protective arm around them, guiding them gently to a chair. Their small frame looked impossibly fragile against the weight of everything that had just been revealed. Her grandmother stared at the child for a long moment, eyes wet, face pale. "I should have done more," she whispered. "I should have brought them inside. I shouldn't have assumed they were gone." Jacob ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "It's insane. They've been living in the woods, in that old cabin, alone." Sarah folded her arms, overwhelmed, but the hardness in her voice had faded. How did they survive all these years?" The child looked down, hugging themselves. Their voice, when it finally came, was small but steady. "I wasn't always alone." Those words stilled the room. Emma knelt so her eyes were level with the child's. "What do you mean?" The child swallowed. "My mom, she stayed with me for a long time, but then she got sick." Their voice cracked. "She told me to hide in the cabin if anything happened. She said someone was looking for us, someone bad." The grandmother gasped softly. Emma reached out, squeezing the child's hand gently. "What happened to your mother?" she asked softly. The child shook their head slowly, eyes glistening. "She didn't wake up one morning. I tried to get help, but I was too scared to come to the house. I thought the bad man might be here, or that someone would take me away." The storm outside seemed to roar louder, as if mourning the years of fear the child endured. Emma felt tears sting her eyes. She pulled the child into a gentle embrace, feeling their small shoulders tremble beneath her hands. "You're safe now," she whispered. "We're here, and we're not letting anything happen to you." The rest of the family watched, silent, stunned, humbled. Jacob finally spoke, his voice quieter than Emma had ever heard it. "We have to tell the authorities, not to take the kid away, but to help them. To find out what really happened, to protect them." Surprisingly, Sarah nodded. "And to fix the cabin. No child should have been living there." The grandmother wiped her eyes, a heavy sadness etched into her expression. "I will take responsibility for all of it." Emma stood, still holding the child's hand. What matters now is that they're not alone anymore. The storm outside began to ease, softening from a roar to a steady whisper. The house seemed to exhale with them, as if finally releasing decades of buried secrets. That night, the family gathered around the child, no longer a stranger hiding under the table, but someone who had survived unimaginable loneliness and fear. Someone who finally had a place where they belonged. And in the warmth of their small, trembling hand, Emma felt something else, a beginning.